Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Caesar's Palace for 12 rounds of boxing. In the red corner, from Los Angeles, California, wearing the red trunks with the gold trim, weighing in at 125 pounds, the lightweight champion of the world, Danny Little Red Lopez. Well, Bill, our winners get a home theater receiver. That's right. Experience the full potential of high-definition video with this 72-channel digital home theater receiver from Yamaha. But wait, that's not all. They also get a 5.1-channel surround sound system from Mirage. With 5 palm-sized speakers and a compact subwoofer cube, the MX 5.1 brings you huge immersive sound with Mirage's omnipolar technology. All from the Spiegel catalog, Chicago, Illinois, 60609. And they're taking closer order as down the stretch they come. Mr. Hot Stuff has 3 lengths to make up with chocolate candy last. On the rail, take the points behind that gallant son with chocolate candy gaining on the outside. In the lead is Pioneer of the Nile being tackled by chocolate candy. They're neck and neck as they come to the wire. And Pioneer of the Nile holds off chocolate candy and wins the Santa Anita Derby. And now, on your feet, time to greet holder of 14 NBA titles, your home team, your Los Angeles Lakers. Number 3 at 6'8", 5th year out of UCLA, playing forward, Trevor Ariza. Starting at center, number 17 at 7 feet, 4th year out of St. Andrews High School, Andrew Bynum. And at guard, number 24, 6'6", 13th season out of Loyal Marion High School, Kobe Bryant.
My father worked 12 hours a day to put food on the table. Great dad, slow cook. It's a few years ago, all my family predicted what we thought my sister would end up doing for a living. Turns out she works for a sex chat line. Yep, I called it. I've had loads of different jobs. At the age of 30, I was a Virgin Air steward, working for British Airways. Used to work in a garden centre. This guy asked me what water feature he should buy, and I was like, well... Used to work in an ice cream shop. This one day I was supposed to start work at 9. Got there at 9:30. Boss was angry, came over. He said, Mark, you're late. I want you to make the time up. I said, okay, it's 9.
Good morning. It's Tuesday, Trump Tuesday, March the 18th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have motivation, Bishop Barron, Ayn Rand, and Donald Trump. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
chill, you feel such a thrill. I'll be walking still when they swing that music. Wait on like that puts me in a trance. Or you can blame me for wanting to dance. You won't understand, it must be just grand to play in the band when they swing that music. I'm as happy as I can be when you swing that music with me.
Thank you. And now the headlines for Tuesday, March the 18th. Sheriff's deputy killed in crash during chase in Victorville. Rise in aggressive forms of cancer in younger adults. Trump set for high-stakes call with Putin. After 9 months on board ISS, NASA astronauts to return home. Section of Wilshire Boulevard closed in Beverly Hills for Metro project. Comedian Tracy Morgan appears to fall ill during Knicks game. Israel hits Gaza with extensive strikes. Judge grills DOJ over Trump deportation flights. And those were the headlines for Tuesday, March the 18th. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now the political corner.
President Trump is a president. He wants to be a president of peace. His goal in this entire process has been to bring about an end to this war. It's a terrible war, a costly war, a bloody war. And his number one interest is ending this war once and for all. Today we made an offer that the Ukrainians have accepted, which is to enter into a ceasefire and into immediate negotiations to end this conflict in a way that's enduring and sustainable and accounts for their interests, their security, their ability to prosper as a nation. I want to personally we both want to thank the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, His Majesty, for hosting us, for making this possible. They've been instrumental in this process, and we're very grateful to them for hosting us here today. And hopefully we'll take this offer now to the Russians. And we hope that they'll say yes, to peace. The ball's now in their court.
And that was the political corner. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now the Patriotic Short.
Hello, my name's Buffalo, and this is Wheel Gun Wednesday. Today we're looking at the most popular handgun of the 20th century. the Smith & Wesson Model 10. This one in particular is a Model 10-5. It has a pinned 3-inch barrel and is on the square butt grip frame. The blued finish shows plenty of wear. I bet if this wheelie could talk, it would tell some interesting stories. It has fixed sights. Someone has wisely put a dab of paint on that front sight. These older pre-lock Smith & Wessons with the hammer noses just look so much better to my eyes than the newer stuff. Although Smith & Wesson did just announce that they'll be producing new Model 10s without the lock. It's a K-frame, and it's chambered for 6 rounds of .38 Special.
And that was the Patriotic Short. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little bit of motivation.
When you have a dream, it doesn't often come at you screaming in your face. Dreams always come from behind you, not right between your eyes. It sneaks up on you. Sometimes a dream almost whispers. It never shouts. Very hard to hear. So you have to, every day of your lives, be ready to hear what whispers in your ear. It very rarely shouts.
That moment in time was one of the darkest moments I've had in my whole life. My motivation was out the door, like I just wanted to give up.
I need you to be who you're supposed to be. Don't let nobody stop you from being who you're supposed to be. Don't let nobody out-talk you. Don't let nobody tell you the doors are shut. Don't let nobody tell you that opportunities don't exist. Don't let nobody tell you that. I need you to be who you're supposed to be, because when you are who you're supposed to be, you're superhuman.
I don't want to delude you because this is a career-ending injury.
Listen to me. You got fear and you got faith. And I've decided not to walk in fear, but to walk in faith. There's greatness in you. Are you hearing me? There's greatness in you. And you mean to tell me you're never going to reach your full potential? You mean to tell me you're never going to be what you've been called to be? That you're not going to do what you've been called to do because you are afraid? Some things don't come. They just not going to come to you because you want it as bad as you want to breathe. You got to put up the dukes, and you got to be willing to fight that thing out. They're not giving out success, but you can earn it. You can take it. I need you to take it. Don't let the distractions distract you.
I would have never started skateboarding.
So whatever you do, man, don't give up. Don't quit. Now listen to me closely. Just because you failed doesn't make you a failure. And when life hits you, you got to keep going. Just don't quit.
In order to achieve greatness, you have to go through a lot of pain. You definitely have setbacks, but in order to achieve that success, you have to push through.
If you hit an oak tree 1,000 times in 1,000 different spots, what's going to happen? Absolutely nothing. But if you hit an oak tree 1,000 times in the exact same spot, you know what's going to happen? You're going to bring it down. You're going to do the impossible. You're not only a special person created at a special time, you got something special inside of you.
You have to believe that you can do something that nobody else has done. And somehow that concept has to become reality.
You got greatness all inside of you, but your problem is you a scaredy cat. You soft, and every time it get hard, you quit and you give up. And I'm telling you, if you would be willing to fight your way through it, if you would be willing to fight your way through this battle, fight your way through cancer, fight your way through that academic struggle, fight your way through divorce, fight your way through it. If it was easy, everybody would do it. You got to fight your way through it. You got to fight the fear, because guess what? Fear ain't bigger than you. If you're going to win the fight of your life, you can't be afraid to fight.
What exactly was hurting on your body?
I think my foot's broken and my shoulder and my back, everything feels pretty broke right now. The doctor tried to get me to not skate, and I basically told him he's going to have to fight.
Are you going to be able to take your fourth and fifth run?
I'm taking every run.
How were you able to muster up the strength to even come back out here and then take another run?
I don't know what it is. It lives inside me, but it has a lot of determination. It's a fire that just keeps burning.
Fear, you are not going to stop me. I got too far. I've come too far to give up now. You got to believe in your dream. You got to believe one day it's going to be your moment. One day you're going to own the moment. Listen to me. Impossible is just a big word thrown around by small men. Many of you right now, life's got you up against the rope. You can't give up. You can't give in. Listen to me. If it was easy, everybody would do it. You've gotten this far. If you was going to quit, you should have quit a long time ago. You got too far. You've come too far to quit now. Show me that nothing is impossible.
And that's a little bit of motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little bit of meditation. Thank you. And now, the Daily Stoic.
Check your privilege. Some people are sharp and others dull. Some are raised in a better environment, others in worse. The latter, having inferior habits and nurture, will require more by way of proof and careful instruction to master these teachings and to be formed by them. In the same way that bodies in a bad state must be given a great deal of care when perfect health is sought. Musonius Rufus, Lectures 1.1.33 through 1.3.1 through 3. At the end of a frustrating exchange, you might find yourself thinking, this person is such an idiot, or asking, why can't they just do things right? But not everyone has had the advantages that you've had. That's not to say that your own life has been easy. You just had a head start over some people. That's why it is our duty to understand and be patient with others. Philosophy is spiritual formation, care of the soul. Some need more care than others, just as some have a better metabolism or were born taller than others. The more forgiving and tolerant you can be of others, the more you can be aware of your various privileges and advantages, the more helpful and patient you will be.
And that was the Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday. And now, The Exorcist.
The point being is that the principle of integrity keeps our appetites moderated so that we don't go to excess or even defect in our judgment. St. Thomas says truth lies in a mean between excess and defect, that we judge the thing neither greater than it is nor less than it is, but as it is. And if we don't keep this principle of evidence in mind and follow it brutally in a principled way, and if we don't keep our appetites in check, what's going to happen is we're going to get sucked into excesses in judging about how bad things are, or depending on our attachments, that we just don't want to admit that things are as bad as we like to think they are.
And that was The Exorcist. And now, the Ayn Rand thought of the day. Quote, ethics is not a mystic fantasy, nor a social convention, nor a dispensable subjective luxury to be switched or discarded in any emergency. Ethics is an objective, metaphysical necessity of man's survival, not by the grace of the supernatural, nor of your neighbors, nor of your whims, but by the grace of reality and the nature of life. Unquote. And that was Ayn Rand from the chapter The Objectivist Ethics, from the book The Virtue of Selfishness. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Varney and Company.
Good morning, Maria, and good morning, everyone. I'm Ashley Webster in today for Stuart Varney. Well, let's get right to it. The Trump administration has until noon today to explain the details of the controversial migrant flights to El Salvador to a federal judge, or provide a reason for not doing so. In the Middle East, the fragile ceasefire between Israel and Hamas has come to an end overnight. Israel launching a wave of airstrikes into Gaza after Hamas refused to release the remaining hostages. And today, President Trump is set for a high-stakes phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin as the White House tries to bridge that widening gap between Russia and Ukraine. All of that to consider. Now, let's get to the markets. After a winning session yesterday, pre-market shows the Dow, S&P, and NASDAQ just slightly lower ahead of the opening bell. Let's take a look at the 10-year Treasury yield. We like to keep an eye on this, moving slightly higher at 4.32%. The 2-year yield, meanwhile, also slightly higher, up 1.5 basis points at 4.05%. And take a look at Bitcoin continuing to move to the downside, down $1,800, right around 82,337 for Bitcoin. On the show today, the National Republican Congressional Committee has set its sights on flipping 26 blue congressional districts in the 2026 elections, including one in New Jersey, a state, by the way, now being called the newest battleground after a surge in GOP victories last November. Plus, President Trump announcing he will release 80,000 never-before-seen JFK files today. The move follows an executive order demanding the release of documents related to the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy, Senator Robert F. Kennedy, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And finally, 2 astronauts who have been stranded in space for 9 months are making their way back to Earth. They are expected to splash down off the coast of Florida tonight. Welcome home. It is Tuesday, March the 18th, 2025.
And that was Stewart or Varney and Company, Nonprofit News Now. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, an article from the American Thinker, Democrats Unmask Themselves, by Fletch Daniels. The Democrats stand primarily for their own personal power, prestige, and wealth. To maintain these, they've patched together a rogues gallery of supporters, forcing party leaders to navigate an array of contradictions. These incongruities between rhetoric and action blast torpedoes straight into their brand's tattered remains. 4 obvious contradictions were on full display this week. Democrats claim to care about government workers, which is unsurprising since the bureaucracy is a core Democrat constituency. Many government agencies are manned almost exclusively by Democrats. Because of this, the Democrat media complex portrays those workers as selfless public servants while accusing the heartless Republicans of destroying lives. These raw emotional appeals are never balanced with any discussion on the existential debt bomb that is driving the government cuts. These workers, bureaucratic resistance to a duly elected president, or the true villains who created a situation where cuts are an absolute necessity. The auto penners who sat perched atop of America for the last 4 years like vultures feasting on a carcass hold a healthy share of that blame. Yet, at the time of this writing, we stand on the brink of the Democrats shutting down the government and sending home every one of those government workers they claim to cherish. They will do it with a filibuster, setting another precedent that will bite them if the pendulum swings back. This seemed inevitable ever since the president's address to Congress, when Democrats were beaten like mad mules thanks to their foolish unwillingness to stand for Americans. They are desperate for anything they can claim is a win to their crazy base, no matter how Pyrrhic. Send the bums home is a bold strategy when the corruptocrats are trying to convince the public that all government workers are essential. Chuck Schumer is playing a pair of twos and expecting the Republicans to fold. It's not going to happen, and the Republicans have no reason to negotiate when they are being threatened with a plastic water gun, especially when the Democrats are stepping so furiously on their own messaging rake. The second core message Democrats assaulted this week was their lunatic argument that climate change is an existential threat. Tesla, as the American company, has done more than any other in cutting greenhouse gases. It's not even close, since the companies the Democrats laundered gold bars into in service of their climate region imploded. In fact, Tesla is the only company that has created a profitable business model centered on electric vehicles. It's everything Democrats claim to dream about. So what did Democrats do? They reached into their usual Marxist bag of tricks and settled on political intimidation and violence as their preferred tools of choice, declaring war on Tesla. They attacked dealerships, defaced cars, and firebombed charging stations. Clearly, even Democrats don't believe their virtue signaling nonsense that elevated climate change as the issue of the day. It brings back memories of Barack Obama being so concerned about oceans rising that he built a $12 million mansion next to, let's see, what does it say here? Next to one. Next to the ocean. I get it. Okay, so with more Republicans now likely to buy Teslas, there will be doing more than Democrats to reduce greenhouse gases, which is par for the course. In other views or news, Democrats claim to stand for Israel and against anti-Semitism. How did they show that support this week? By rushing to turn a terrorist-supporting thug into a hero. If you listen to the Democrats all lining up to support Mahmoud Khalil, you'd think that he was a combination of George Washington and Gandhi. Hey, he's going to have a baby. The reality is that he's an evil man. He celebrates the October 7 atrocities, and his group has called for the eradication of Western civilization. His group also encourages violent extremists to fight the U.S. If Americans actually had the full picture of Khalil, this would be a 90-10 issue, with his only support coming from the terrorist-hugging Rashid Tlaib Ilham Omar wing of the country. No sane leader would keep such a hostile non-citizen around. 14 Democrats wrote a letter demanding his release as Democrats compete to be the loudest defender. The irony-challenged Dems wrote that universities through the country must protect their students from this vile assault on free thought and expression in defense of a guy who is leading an assault on the free thought and expression of Jewish students. Democrats do love their shock troops. This happened around the same time universities discovered they would face consequences for not protecting their students when Columbia lost $400 million in federal funding. The biggest question is why they had such obscene federal funding in the first place. Considering that universities are the incubator of anti-American evil, all taxpayer funding of the universities, save the military academies, should end. That batty bartender, AOC, was horrified that we could disappear a legal U.S. permanent resident without reason. After all, he isn't so awful as to be a Trump supporter. That's what passes for Democrat wisdom these days. That tension in the party between their Jewish voters and their Jewish-hating voters will worsen. It's already driving their foreign policy agenda as their constant betrayal of Israel under the Otto Penners made clear. Jewish voters who've traditionally voted for Democrats have been slowly moving towards Republicans, hitting record levels in 2024 since the message, quote, vote for us so we can hate you better, unquote, has a rather limited appeal. That movement will pick up steam as the mask increasingly falls away. Finally, we saw the ongoing contradiction in the Democrats' argument that they are the defenders of women as they continue to champion men in women's spaces. They are determined to continue the 2080 crusade, convinced that the 80% will eventually rally to their cause. Not only are they determined to die on this hill, but they intend to silence anyone who opposes them whenever they have the power to do so. A robust debate isn't your friend when your position is despised by anyone with even a smidgen of logic. That's why Democrats in Maine censured Republican State Representative Laurel Libby for her efforts to keep boys out of girls' sports. The week's bizarre news was that all of Maine's federal judges recused themselves from hearing Libby's lawsuit. There's no apparent conflict of interest, so it appears that they don't want to touch the issue. The lawsuit will now be heard in Rhode Island. Until Democrats bow to reality, they will fail to convince anyone that they stand for women instead of putting them at great risk from mentally ill men. The Democrats are a party that values rhetoric over action, particularly when that action consistently runs counter to that rhetoric. This week we saw the party of government champions shuttering the government, the party of climate doom actively attacking the most successful climate-conscious company, the party of faux tolerance championing a ruthless anti-Semite, and the party that pretends to be for women continuing its ruthless crusade against them. When a political party goes insane, consistency of message becomes a casualty. The contradictions are causing the mask to slip off, revealing the maggots wiggling in the pile of dung underneath. That leaves Democrats' hopes vested in the media, helping them to make America blind again. And this is written by a guy named Fletch. And it's, again, from the American Thinker, Democrats unmask themselves. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now we pick up where we left off with the Gospel according to Breaking Bad.
Chapter 9. You're a drug dealer. The picture for this chapter is, of course, A bent spoon, good for only one thing. The drug that stops at nothing. Consider the irony of Walter's ways. Diagnosed with lung cancer and needing chemotherapy and drugs to survive, Walter turns to selling a different type of drug. He slings one kind of drug that makes the world momentarily better for those already living in their own hells in order to pay for his own drugs that make the world momentarily better for his own hellish, cancer-ridden existence. When you ask people if they watch Breaking Bad, those who haven't seen the show will likely first say, "Isn't that show where the guy from Malcolm in the Middle sells meth?" You nod your head because their statement is true, but you feel the need to round out their woefully lacking description. Sure, Breaking Bad is about a chemistry teacher selling meth, but that's similar to saying that Citizen Kane is about a sled. The fact that Walter White sells methamphetamines is an essential part of the show, but it is not what the show is about. Gilligan and Company used the plot device of meth production and distribution to make us consider our notions of good and evil and right and wrong. It's the backdrop against which a contemporary morality play can be told using characters we may not necessarily know, but can easily imagine the kinds of choices they'd have to face. Our collective sympathy for Walter clouds our view of the repercussions of his actions. It's as if we've become conditioned to accept his modus operandi, as terrifying as it can be. It's as if we've been drugged ourselves. As we'll see, meth provides an apt metaphor for many of the show's major themes, but it was originally chosen as the featured drug of Breaking Bad more for narrative rather than metaphorical purposes. While it's not out of the question to suppose that Gilligan and his writers chose this soul-crushing drug for a litany of reasons, their initial choice of meth as the prime catalyst for the show was essentially a one-off joke that became the starting point for the entire series. The joke happened when Gilligan was talking with Tom Schnauz, a writer he'd previously worked with on The X-Files. We were trying to figure out what we were going to do next because The X-Files had just ended and writing jobs were few and far between. Should we be greeters at Walmart? Should we put a meth lab in the back of an RV? It was in the midst of joking around that this idea struck home. What would an otherwise law-abiding person be doing in a meth lab in the back of an RV? That was the eureka moment for me. And meth makes perfect sense, story-wise, for Breaking Bad. Unlike marijuana or cocaine, it's a completely synthesized drug that needs a chemist and not a farmer to make. I like the idea of Walt being good at chemistry and having a unique set of skills that would allow him to cook the best meth available. And it's also just a nasty, terrible drug that destroys people and whole communities. In the National Geographic made-for-TV documentary, World's Most Dangerous Drug, hosted by Lisa Ling, the opening voiceover calls meth the drug that stops at nothing. A Portland resident says that it's destroying everything in her neighborhood. An inmate warns, "You cannot control this drug." Corrections officer Brett King, who's seen the effects of nearly every kind of drug on a person, calls meth insidious, noting that there isn't anyone it doesn't touch. It blows away everything else out there. A former addict says, "The stuff gets into you and takes you for a ride you never expected." That addict's father gives words to the heartbreaking reality of meth addiction. It's astounding how everything goes to hell because of a little white powder. In the last few decades, that little white powder has become one of the most popular drugs in the U.S., with a reported 12 million people saying they've tried it at least once. How did it become so popular? Meth is cheap, powerful, and easy to find. One hit, or about 1/4 of a gram, could be had for as little as $25. The high a user receives from snorting, swallowing, smoking, or shooting up meth can last anywhere from 6 to 12 hours. In comparison, a cocaine high could last up to an hour, and it would cost more. Lastly, the ingredients needed to create methamphetamines can be bought at a store around the corner. One officer even went so far as to say that if you can bake cookies, you can cook meth. The key ingredient in meth is pseudoephedrine, the active ingredient in many common cold medicines. This is one of the reasons why meth is both cheap and easy to produce. Through a series of sometimes dangerous steps, a meth producer aims to extract as much pseudoephedrine from the cold medicine as possible. In the Breaking Bad world, Walter and Jesse refrained from using pseudo, since they'd get caught buying such large quantities to fulfill their orders. With Walter's chemistry prowess, he tells Jesse they're going to make phenylacetone in a tube furnace. Then we're going to use reductive animation to yield methamphetamine. To which Jesse enthusiastically replies, in a line much beloved by fans, "Yeah, Mr. White. Yeah, science." The fearsome twosome of the ABQ cook crystal meth, a form of meth that's more pure, potent, and dangerous to create. Called Blue Sky, Big Blue, Blue Magic, or That Blue Stuff. Walter and Jesse create a drug that makes nearly everyone in the show break bad. While blue meth has been distributed in the real world, a result of ground-up chalk being added to the mix, Walter and Jesse's Blue Sky ostensibly receives its distinct color from the strict and rigorous chemical processes that Walter demands before his near-perfect product is ready to sell. However, its blue coloration is more a plot device, and better suited for the camera, than actual science. Like the real-life example, the unmistakable blue color is a marketing ploy for Heisenberg's product, a way to distinguish themselves amidst a vast sea of whitish, inferior competitors. The insidious effects of methamphetamines. What are the effects of such a drug, especially its pure forms? Users receive an instant hit the moment meth enters their body. Euphoria, energy, and confidence flow freely. A former addict recalls, "It feels like you have superhuman powers. It feels like you're a different entity. You're all of a sudden more than you were. You're just better." However, this high of highs can lead to the lowest of valleys. Meth use results in experiencing the hyperactivity of using cocaine, plus the delusions that accompany dropping LSD. It's two bad trips in one, a lonely vacation to a fearful place. Meth addicts can become paranoid and violent, symptoms made all too visceral when the meth-addled Tuco coldly murders one of his henchmen in front of the stunned Walter and Jesse. Two of the telltale signs of meth addiction are open sores and very poor teeth. Meth bugs attack delusional addicts, causing them to scratch at themselves in vain attempts to pick at the millions of invisible bugs attacking them. Meth mouth occurs because the drug impedes the flow of saliva. Users don't drink enough fluid, so bacteria and natural acid accumulates in their mouths, dissolving necessary tooth enamel and killing their gums. Even as visually shocking as these evident signs of using meth are, the most arresting signal of meth's devastation can be seen when comparing before and after photos. In addition to scabs, scars, missing teeth, and open sores on faces and arms, meth addicts' eyes appear vacant, like looking into the windows of an abandoned hotel. They are weary, beaten souls, hollowed out by the ravages of a drug they cannot control. To simply see their eyes before and after, even a few years of constant meth use, is to witness the living decay of a soul. Brett King, the corrections officer who noted the sad differences of these pictures, was right to call meth insidious. The word means proceeding in a gradual, subtle way, but with harmful effects. Synonyms include corrupting, sly, crafty, and treacherous. Each of these words aptly describes this drug, as well as the anti-hero of Breaking Bad. So, how does meth actually infiltrate the mind? What chemical processes occur in the brain to where a user could become so addicted to the drug that it effectively owns them? Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that rewards us with pleasurable feelings when we accomplish something. Eating and sex are two of the most common ways to experience the release of dopamine. Part of the chemical process that results in your feelings of happiness stem from the brain releasing a certain amount of dopamine from the part called the nucleus accumbens. Meth is an imposter. Its molecules closely resemble dopamine molecules. When introduced into a person's system, the brain's nucleus accumbens accepts these molecules, thinking them to be dopamine. As insidious molecules, they slyly slip in. Meth tricks the nucleus accumbens to release an inordinate amount of dopamine into the body. One hit of meth reportedly releases 12 units of dopamine, 3.5 times the amount of dopamine released by doing cocaine, or a staggering 6 times the amount of dopamine naturally produced by the body. That is why people get hooked. Such intense pleasure for such a long period of time allows anyone to forget the difficulties of their daily life. This drug's evil nature promises pleasure, but only brings sorrow. It promises the world, but steals souls. The addict's first hit can never be matched. That outflow of dopamine molecules can never be equaled. Yet the craving for that feeling rises as the addict's ability to experience pleasure falls. Vainly striving to experience that first high again, users chase the window. Yet the window becomes smaller and smaller over time until the drug no longer provides the type of pleasure the user seeks. By then, the user has become an addict. Meth actually damages the brain. In fact, addicts fall from the euphoria of an abundance of dopamine to the depression of having too little dopamine in their system. Eventually, with or without the drug, they can no longer experience pleasure, as that part of their brain has been devastated by meth. Unfortunately, meth also affects the part of the brain that controls cravings. It's a vicious, insidious, life-sucking, skin-scarring, soul-destroying cycle. In that TV documentary, host Lisa Ling succinctly described the addict's cycle. The more he used the drug, the more he needed it. Meth as metaphor. Knowing what we know about Walter White, let's consider how the metaphor of meth actually plays out in the series. First, consider the unsubtle fact that actual crystal meth is White, our tyrant of an anti-hero's last name. However, these similarities go much deeper than that. As sure as hydrofluoric acid eats through ceramic, meth and Walter White likewise disintegrate everything they touch. To plot Walter's conniving machinations would be to see his mind as the impetus for every despicable deed conducted on the show. From killing Gale to exploding Gus and Salamanca, Walter's ways result in the destruction of those who dare impede his goals. What will this mean for Jesse, Hank, Skyler, Walt Jr., or even baby Holly in the last 8 episodes? They have already suffered for remaining in Walter's proverbial blast radius, but none have yet to pay the greatest price for their association with Heisenberg. By allowing Walter even an inch deep into their lives and minds, they've already allowed him to transgress too far. Like that first hit, Walter promises them the world, but it's a world where the bottom will fall out in due time. Though Walter prides himself on not using his own product and often criticizes Jesse for going back to using, Walter is addicted to a drug of a different sort, one that is as potent, powerful, and dangerous as the blue sky he cooks. As we've already covered, Walter is addicted to power. His pride constantly craves another hit. Again and again he acts in reprehensible ways so that he can be rewarded with respect, a feeling of professional pleasure he never received in his pre-Heisenberg life. He yearns for the same hit of dopamine just as much as the addicts he sells to do, except he's oblivious to his own addiction. Walter White is insidious to the core. Likely best captured in the provocative pan of the camera to the Lily of the Valley plant in Season 4's epic finale, Face Off. We know Walter's treacherous ways. He has become so adept at lying that he's able to constantly lie to himself, especially in the first 2 seasons when he still naively believes he's conducting all of this ridiculously illegal business for the betterment of his family after his passing. When Walter shaves his head for the second time, after learning of his cancer's remission, we know he's gone full Heisenberg. The mild-mannered, beige-sweatered Mr. White has transformed into his own Mr. Hyde, a drug-dealing monomaniacal sociopath with a cool intellectual demeanor that allows him to escape unnoticed from an untold amount of possible captures. He eventually slips into the world of the international drug trade as if it were just another logical step in his business plan, forgetting to take into account the incredible costs to himself and his family should he get caught. In too deep, he cannot hope to free himself from his addiction. Meth eventually reveals itself through horrendous outward signs. In contrast, Walter's sickening soul cannot be seen through such visual cues. Though his worsening condition is seen in the way he relates to his long-suffering wife, or the terseness with which he responds to his son, the effects of his decisions aren't visible to the naked eye. Still, like the drug that terrorizes its victims while causing drastic changes to their physical body, so too do Walter's actions cause him to undergo an incredible transformation of the soul. Just as he said in the pilot, it's growth, decay, then transformation. Walter has certainly grown in stature as a meth kingpin, but at the cost of a decayed soul. As we've noticed, fleeting moments occur throughout the show where the viewer catches a sudden glimpse of Walter's fear and loneliness. Knowing that he's gone too far again, Walter's eyes widen for a few seconds, a telling reveal that he's seriously reconsidering his ways due to the tragic repercussions of his actions. Again, the moment Walter allows Jane to die is one of the best examples of Bryan Cranston's nuanced portrayal of a man hell-bent on his own demise, yet still barely cognizant of the devastating effects he's having on everyone around him. But the moment quickly passes as Walter realizes that the cost to himself of not going through with a dastardly deed is too high. The fear subsides as I am the danger takes its place. We may not be able to visibly see Walter's transformation from average Joe to power-hungry addict, but we know for a fact that without serious intervention, Walter will never be able to return to being the man he once was. Meth causes its users to care more about their next fix than anything else in the world. It's a drug that revels in selfishness, forcing users to fixate on how they can get what they want out of life, namely, more meth. As a result, as one inmate put it during that TV documentary, you get real heartless when you do it, meth. In the moment, meth users don't care who they hurt, so long as they can get their next hit when they want it. Walter, for all of his gesturing as just a product manufacturer, suffers from the same heartlessness. In the moment, he will do everything he can in order to get his next hit of pride and respect. He keeps chasing that first high, which may have been the moment he blew up Tuco's hideout with fulminated mercury. Walter's chasing after such a high may be just as motivated by self-preservation as it is by pleasure-seeking, in a twisted way. But it presents an interesting similarity to a drug user seeking their next fix. They want it for the feeling of pleasure it affords them, and they feel that without it, they might die. Lastly, meth is a liar. It promises immense amounts of pleasure for a long period of time, but its effects wane the longer it's used. A user also justifies its use to themselves, feeling that they have to have it, or they can't go on living. Walt, too, is a liar. How often have we seen this? We know this, even from the first episode, as he forgoes telling his wife and family about his lung cancer death sentence. To plot Walter's lies over the course of the series would be a case study in pathological lying. His web of deceit has been woven for so long that it's not hard to imagine a single WW thread would mark the beginning of his end. Curing our addiction. What's the hope for a meth user then, and consequently for Walter White? How can they break their addiction? First, they must be able to correctly perceive themselves. An inmate 9 months clean said it well when she spoke of other users and herself. They feel strongly they can do anything, and they believe their own psychoses. I believed mine for the longest time, until I looked at myself. Proper self-perception is terribly difficult to achieve, even for average people who don't engage in highly illegal activities. Our hearts and minds are often so enamored with ourselves, so adept at justifying our own actions, that seldom can we fully know how our actions have affected others, whether positively or negatively. How much more difficult is it for those who've broken bad? As mental self-preservation, the mind tends to hide from itself that which it can't bear to name as true. More often than not, a surprising and providential moment must intervene in order to cause the user to come face to face with themselves. Such a moment can be when the user almost dies, or when their actions, while high, result in the death of someone else. So, too, will Walter be confronted with the full impact of his decisions over the last year of his life. Many viewers believe that someone in his family will die by series end, and that person's death will be intimately linked with Walter's nefarious actions. In that moment, he will realize the full and awesome weight of his life's decisions. He will want to come clean, but it may be far too late. His sins will have found him out, begging for justice to be served. A popular saying in Christendom echoes exactly what an inmate said at the beginning of this chapter. Sin will take you farther than you want to go, keep you longer than you want to stay, and cost you more than you want to pay. At its most basic level, sin is any action that goes against God's good desires for a person's life, spanning the gamut from laziness to murder. While the earthly repercussions of sin greatly differ depending on what a person has done, the eternal consequences are still the same: separation from God. Sin can be as ravaging as cancer, eating away at the interior of a body without remorse. Unless acted upon by an outside force, it will brutally attack a body until nothing is left but a husk. It will grow and metastasize and take over as much as it can as quickly as it can. Sin is also an addictive drug. It will often reward the brain with dopamine and pleasure and cause it to crave more of the same, yet it will fail to keep providing the same reward. It will cause a person to enter an endless cycle of sin and shame, a place where a person feels remorse about their actions, but not knowing what to do with those negative feelings, cause them to return to the one thing they hope will make the pain go away: sin. The best way we know to start treating cancer is to visually see its devastation within the body. Without proper visualization of the cancer, doctors cannot know how to effectively treat it. Likewise, curing an addiction requires properly seeing its effects on the user and those around them. It mandates incredibly difficult and brutally honest self-reflection. So too does dealing with sin. A person must exercise utter transparency with themselves and their own shortcomings, admitting their own faults in many, many areas before being able to turn away from those things that would separate them from God. If we claim to be without sin, we deceive ourselves, and the truth is not in us. If we confess our sins, he is faithful and just, and will forgive us our sins and purify us from all unrighteousness. Will Walter ever come clean? Will he confess his sins to Hank, hoping for lenience? Or will he suffer the full weight of his actions and be outed on national television as a chemistry teacher turned meth kingpin? Will the cancer that lies dormant in his body awaken, a physical manifestation of the universe's justice? Or will Walter's insatiable need to feed his ego to get his fix result in his own death caused by an overdose of pride? More than that, who else will suffer greatly as a result of Walter's addiction? A meth dealer's true story. To bring the somewhat glamorized lifestyle of drug dealing in Breaking Bad into stark contrast with its real-world repercussions, I've been allowed to reprint the story of a man who could have been the real-life inspiration for Jesse or Walter. Drawn into a life of drug addiction and then meth distribution, this man eventually found God, or, as he puts it, God found him. This man shares his story with anyone who will listen, and rightly so. Though shamed by his past, he's proud of his Jesus. To meet him today, you wouldn't think his past to be so dark. He's graciously allowed me to publish and be read here his story as a testament to the true life evils of meth addiction and the drug trade, as well as a proclamation of the miraculous power of the gospel to change even the most hardened of sinners' lives. As follows. Growing up, I didn't have a spiritual leader in my life. My mom was the only one who would drag us to church occasionally, but that was only a few times a year. Not having a spiritual foundation at an early age and into my teens was the forerunner to an upside-down decade of my life. Moving to a new school my 7th grade year made it tough for me to fit in. I couldn't turn to my dad for help with the new transition, so I had to find a way to get friends. The drug crowd seemed to be the only ones who accepted me. Having no real education about the peer pressure of drug use and its effect on my body, I tried meth for the first time. It was the biggest rush I'd ever felt. The sensation was beyond my comprehension. I felt more alive than ever before. I was instantly hooked. All my cares, worries, and frustrations disappeared. This was my escape, my release, and my new best friend. I began to take it more often than recreationally. It became an everyday habit after the first year of use. My attitude and personality changed drastically. I began living the thug life, which led me into stealing and selling the drug to others. Experimenting with other drugs became common. I did every drug that was on the table, but meth was still my drug of choice. It had completely taken over my life. I would stay up for 5 to 7 days straight without sleep. After high school, I moved from my small town to a big city. This would send me on an even more dangerous journey with a scary lifestyle. With the big city came the rave dance scene, which went hand in hand with heavier drug use. Music became a huge passion of mine, and I became a well-known DJ, playing at major clubs downtown on most nights. As a result, I encountered more and more people, all of whom I saw as drug-selling clientele. I was selling more meth and other drugs than I could keep up with. I stopped DJing to start selling full-time. I pushed over 20 pounds of meth every month. My living arrangements alternated from 5-star hotel to 5-star hotel every 2 days, my pockets filled with thousands of dollars. As a side note, meth really hones in on the sexual drive. My hotel rooms were filled with women and many inappropriate sexual activities. The sense of power I had from selling was unparalleled. How could I stop this fast-paced lifestyle? I preferred to smoke meth. I shot up with heroin and meth, but to me, smoking was just my thing. The ounce-a-day habit physically ravaged my body. My teeth deteriorated and fell out one by one. I looked much older than my 20 years. My girlfriend at the time became pregnant. This event changed my outlook on how my life was going to be. How could I raise a child in a drug-fueled environment? I knew I had to leave the lifestyle that I'd worked so hard to build. I wanted to be a better father to him than what I was accustomed to while growing up. I knew leaving the game was the only option. After my son was born, I felt a tug at my heart. I was unsure how to handle what it was, but I listened to it. With much trouble and many problems, I removed myself from the fast-paced lifestyle I had once been addicted to. At the time, it was the most difficult thing I'd ever faced. Selling drugs was all that I knew and was the only thing I was good at. In order to care for my son, I moved in with my parents and changed my number so that my former bosses and clients couldn't reach me. Little did I know the lasting effects of my choices. I'd left behind an expensive drug habit where drugs were always available. At that point in my life, I just wanted to have a small amount. I tried everything from drug rehab to counseling. Nothing worked. The addiction was just too great for me to handle. I tried, several times, to take my own life. I would never wish my addiction onto my worst enemy. I would shake into convulsions and punch holes into apartment walls. Waking up to that feeling every day would make you want to kill yourself. The longest I could go without using was 2 weeks. Then I would relapse. I would do anything to get it. I struggled like that for 3 years to get out of the game. It was 3 years of hell in my life. Depression, massive amounts of anxiety, and suicidal thoughts were just about my only friends then. Late at night in early 2005, I felt that tug at my heart again. I was still trying to figure out what it was. I began to think of God, and what I remembered of him when I was younger. I got on my knees that night and said in a loud and angry voice, "If you are real, then prove it to me. Take this from me." The next morning, on my birthday no less, I contacted my mother and said, "I want to go to church." We then attended a local church. I felt so out of place. At the end of the sermon, the preacher asked if anyone wanted to come forward and accept Christ. Out of faith, I got up. Tears immediately flowed. I walked up front with the entire congregation clapping me on to continue. I told the preacher, "I've been a drug addict practically my entire life. What do I need to do?" He said, "I have the answer. Pray with me." I accepted Christ that day and felt a sense of relief and comfort. The next morning changed my life. Upon waking up that morning, the addiction that had gripped my life for so long and had nearly destroyed me was supernaturally gone. I wept and cried out to him, thanking him for loving me enough to defeat the most powerful enemy in my life. His grace was all I needed to set my son and me onto a new road of life. I have been sober ever since that day, and God's overwhelming love has given me a new heart and relationship with him.
And that was Chapter 11 from the Gospel According to Breaking Bad, written by Blake Atwood and read by Alex Hyde White. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that reality is not fungible.